All right, let's talk about one of the most kind of sneaky concepts in all of audio, phase. It's that hidden thing that can totally make or break your sound. But don't worry, by the end of this, you're going to get it. You'll know how to hear it, and more importantly, what to do about it.
So let's kick things off with a situation. And I'm willing to bet this is going to sound frustratingly familiar, especially if you've ever, spent hours trying to get a mix just right or tune a speaker system.
I mean, you've been there, right? You're staring at the screen. Your measurement software is showing this beautiful, flat frequency response. The distortion number's incredibly low. I mean, on paper, this thing should sound absolutely incredible. But it just doesn't. The sound is kind of weak or smeared, maybe unfocused. You know something is wrong, but you can't see it on the graph.
Well, that invisible culprit, that ghost in the machine that your measurements aren't telling you about, yeah, that's almost always phase. And today, we are pulling back the curtain on this thing.
Okay, so what is phase, really? Let's just break it down. No confusing math, I promise. We're just going to get right to the heart of what it actually means for a sound wave.
Okay, just picture a simple, pure tone, like a perfect sine wave, right? Now, what if we take that wave and just nudge it, a little bit forward or a little bit backward in time? The shape of the wave doesn't change at all. It's still a perfect sine wave, but its starting point has moved. That little change, that little time shift, that's what we call phase shift.
And we actually measure this shift in degrees. So if you have two signals and they're at 0 degrees phase shift, that just means they're perfectly in sync. They start their journey at the exact same time. They're playing on the same team.
Now, a 90-degree shift, this means one signal is now lagging behind the other by a quarter of its cycle. They're not perfectly aligned anymore. And this right here is where things start to get really interesting when they try to combine.
And then you've got the 180-degree shift. This is a complete flip, a total inversion. The peak of one wave lines up perfectly with the valley of the other. They're now in direct opposition, totally fighting each other.
So here's the big takeaway from all this. When you strip it all down, phase is really just a fancy word for timing information. It's just a way to talk about the timing relationship between signals, measured in degrees. And that simple idea, timing, that's the key to unlocking everything else.
Okay, but if phase is just timing, why does it get so complicated? Well, because of this one crucial detail. How that timing matters is completely dependent on the frequency.
And this is a really, really critical distinction to get. Think about it. A simple time delay is easy. You delay the whole song by, say, 10 milliseconds. Every frequency gets pushed back by the exact same amount. Easy. But a phase shift, that's different. A 90-degree shift on a really low bass note is actually a pretty long delay in real time because that bass wave is so long. But a 90-degree shift on a super high-frequency cymbal crash, that's a tiny, tiny fraction of a second. So the same angle means a different amount of time depending on the frequency. That's the key right there.
And that is why this matters so much. Because what it means is that different frequencies in your music can end up arriving at your ears at slightly different times. And when that happens, the sound gets smeared. Those sharp, punchy transients get weakened. It can even mess with your stereo image. Basically, the timing just gets all jumbled up.
Okay, theory's great, but let's make this real. Where do you actually encounter this problem every single day? Well, look no further than the crossover in pretty much any speaker. So you've got a two-way speaker, right? The crossover is just the point where the big woofer hands off the job to the little tweeter. Right at that specific frequency, they're both making sound. Now, if their timing is perfect, if they're in phase, they add up beautifully, a nice smooth transition. But if they're out of phase, they literally start fighting each other. One is pushing while the other is pulling, and what you get is cancellation. That's that weird dip you hear, that hollow, weak sound right in the middle of a singer's voice or a guitar riff.
So, how do we fix this mess? Well, in the digital world, we have some incredibly powerful tools called DSP filters. And the cool thing about these filters is they can control not just how loud a frequency is, but also when it arrives. And there are really two main ways to go about it. First, you've got your minimum phase filters. These are the ones you see most often. They're super fast, really efficient, but they have a downside. They always mess with the timing. It's just part of how they work. Then you have linear phase filters. Now, these are a lot more complex, they take more processing power, and they add a little bit of overall delay. But they do something that's kind of like magic. They keep the timing relationship perfect across all frequencies. They preserve the original sound with just incredible accuracy. This brings us to another really critical idea, something that's tied directly to all this phase stuff. It's called group delay, and honestly, it can be the hidden killer of a tight, punchy sound. So what is it?
Well, group delay is basically just a way to measure how much time different frequencies experience as they go through a system. And when you have high group delay, especially down in the bass, you get these really specific problems you can hear. That kick drum? It loses its snap. It feels kind of slow and laggy. The bass guitar sounds muddy. You can't quite pick out the notes. It just robs the low end of all its impact, even when the frequency response graph looks perfectly flat.
Okay, so we've covered a lot. What does this all mean when you put it together? Let's connect all the dots, because it all boils down to this simple but really powerful chain reaction. It starts here. Phase is timing. Simple as that. And that timing, well, that affects how sound waves add together or subtract from each other. It affects their summation. And how those waves sum up, that directly determines the clarity and the punch of the final sound you hear. And finally, that clarity is what shapes how we as humans perceive the audio. It's literally the difference between sound that feels engaging and alive and sound that just feels flat and smeared and lifeless. So if you remember one thing, let it be this. Frequency response tells you how loud something is, phase tells you when, and in audio, timing is absolutely everything. So the next time you're listening to something and it just doesn't feel right, even though all the measurements look perfect, stop and ask yourself, is this a how loud problem or is it a when problem?